we have 8? Oh, wait. Yeah, we got 8. Oh, no. Go. All right, good morning. It's 9 o'clock. We'll get our meeting called to order here. We'll do introductions here if we can start on this end and work our way out to the crowd.
Mark Murphy, representing the Iowa Firefighters Association.
That works.
George Griffith, Iowa Peace Officers Association. Sorry about that.
Tracy Beer and Iowa Nina.
Mike Bryant, representing the Iowa Professional Firefighters.
Rob Rotter, Iowa County Sheriff, representing Iowa State Sheriffs and Deputies Association.
Sally Hall, from Iowa County 911, representing Iowa APCO.
Lawrence Hartpence, representing Iowa Geographic Information Council.
Blake DeRucci, Iowa Homeland Security Emergency Management, 911 Program Manager.
James Chambers, representing Large Telco, CenturyLink.
You want to go? Still flashing green, so you gotta introduce yourself.
Brian McNeely, Comtech Telecommunications.
Andrew Singer, Comtech Telecommunications.
Ray Wendell, Comtech Telecommunications.
Brian Maybell, Westcom.
Sherry Schmitz with Motorola.
Rob Bowers, Iowa State University.
Dana McKenna, Story County Sheriff's Office.
Amanda Roush, Story County 911.
Cheryl Lackloff, Mahaska County 911.
Jim Lundstedt, DHS Office of Emergency Communications.
Josh Humphrey, Iowa County Emergency Management.
Crystal McIntyre, Warren County.
Doug McCaslin, Warren County 911.
Terry McClanahan, Dallas County. Curtis Pione, Polk County Sheriff's Office.
Chris Myers, on the SWIC.
Brent Long, Polk County Sheriff's Office.
Mike Lauer, ICN.
Tammy Rodriguez, ICN.
Okay, and I imagine we probably have some folks on the phone. If you could introduce yourselves.
Denise Pavlik, Scott Emergency Communications Center.
Stacy Gross, Geocom.
Martha Dykstra, Marion County Sheriff's Office.
All right, do we have everybody? Okay. I could seek a motion to approve today's agenda. So moved. Do we have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. And likewise for the approval of the April minutes. Have a motion? Second? All those in favor? Against? Motion carries. Blake.
Oh, it's up there. All right. Good morning, everyone. The quarterly financials I will pass around, but you can see the highlights on the slide. So it's all pretty self-explanatory. It's the same report that you've seen before, just to reiterate or highlight kind of towards the bottom of that slide. Currently approximately $18 million in the operating surplus 7.6 of that is actually unobligated. When you factor in the $7 million, the 6.9 that will pass through as a lump sum at the end of this fiscal year, and the 3.5 that's in there for the catastrophic reserve. That 7.6 is what we will use basically to start the virtual consolidation effort, kind of that nest egg that we've been protecting for a couple years now. Certainly take any questions on that now or after you've had a chance to digest it at any point during my presentation. Yes, Mr. Bryant.
Sorry, did the one county that was not up to par to
They
get
slid
theirs?
in under the radar, so we did not get to keep that money and divvy it to everyone.
Okay.
It all went to Mills County
Okay,
with about 3 days to spare.
perfect.
And everyone turned in their data for this year, so I won't have to withhold any funds from the PSAPs that you are looking at now. Speaking of the virtual consolidation efforts, we're hoping to have the contract signed within 30 days. We're close, just kind of the last couple red lines that we're looking at right now. Just continued coordination with Comtech, ICN, and Zetron. Just because the contract isn't signed doesn't mean we're all not talking and getting things figured out. In fact, as you can see the bottom there, we are doing a proof of concept, basically asking Zetron to prove it. Their solution works. No worries with that, but Hancock is one of the counties that is kind of keeping their current CPE together with spit and duct tape. So trying to make sure that everything works there, and just they're going to be the first people onboarded and working through that process now. Again, that was considered as part of the RFP, so we're just kind of enacting that early. I want to talk a little bit about the future of the GIS grants. They're on the books forever and ever. There's no worry about that going away. But the legislative language, which I'll show you here in a second, gives us and the council some wide parameters. Basically, it says there's a grant. You guys figure out how you want to manage the grant, make the grant work, whatever whatever you want it to look like. In the past, we've done kind of a reimbursement method. So a county will submit a project to us. They do the work. We assume it's good. There's not really any criteria other than you did the project. There's no benchmarks, no standards, you have to continually improve your data, and here's your check. So, but it doesn't really reward any sort of behavior, and that's kind of what we're trying to drive is modifying, not behavior necessarily, but improving the quality of the data that we're getting. So this was actually an idea that somebody mentioned at a Western Iowa PSAP supervisor group meeting. We liked the idea, the GIS folks in our office. So it's not my idea if you hate it, it's somebody else's idea, but we kind of like it. So going to something of a kind of an incentive-based grant, whereas a county would upload their data twice a year as a minimum. And if they do that and the data meets a certain quality, and that's kind of the devil's in the details with that. We haven't exactly figured out what those benchmarks are. But if you meet those criteria or you demonstrate improvement, here's $6,000 for the first half of the year. Second part of the year comes around, you do the same thing, show improvement, meet those benchmarks. Here's your check for the second part of the year. So it's just a concept at this point. And then the other part of that is looking at the numbers, looking at the quotes that come in, and I've floated this for a while. We are looking at $12,000 instead of the $15,000. So it's amazing how many of the quotes come in right at $15,000, and I'm curious as to why that always happens. Looking at the numbers, looking at the quotes that come in, that's kind of the proposal. Looking for any feedback that you guys might have. Lawrence, yep.
Do I need to use the microphone?
Yeah.
Push the little button in it.
Just a question. So with this new incentive program, we're not so much looking for projects then, just looking for benchmarks and saying, hey, here's your reward for doing that.
Right. You know, I think the reimbursement grants were great to get people's data off the ground and get it improved and get it started. We really are kind of in that maintenance phase now. So kind of just business as usual, rather than, a big lift. So yeah, it's kind of exactly what we were thinking.
So everyone gets this if they,
Right.
whether they apply or
Right.
not.
Correct. So kind of like we're doing with the lump sum pass-throughs at the end of the fiscal year with whatever is left in the operating surplus, kind of the similar concept. Here's your check. No application needed. You submit the data. We see that it's in there. We see how good it is. If it meets those benchmarks or shows improvement, here's your check. So not looking for a vote per se. If you do have any feedback, you can think about it. You know how to get a hold of me. But that's kind of what we're floating around and seeing if there's any significant issues that anyone has with that. And like I said, you can see the grant language on the screen. You can look at it. It's been up there for a little while. But like I said, it basically just says that we'll provide guidelines, forms, notice of availability. It gives us kind of a pretty broad range on how we want to manage that. So speaking of GIS grants, these are the 4 that were submitted this month. I know you guys will vote on that in a little bit, just wanted to show you. And then this is the statewide map of those who have applied for the grants thus far, and you can see the total at the bottom there. One more handout. I know I don't have enough handouts for the audience here, but you can see again the highlights on the screen on where we stand with the Council Travel, Public Education, and Training Fund. There's one request, Mahaska County officer down for $8,000. They know and they will have that course before the end of the fiscal year. If we approve that, that would leave about $16,000. There's normally some last minute council travel that comes in towards the end as well. So I wanted to ask and hopefully get your permission to spend about $13,000 on Google and Facebook ads on websites, on text to 911 to get closer to that $100,000. Basically use the rest of the funds that we have there. The company that we'd go through is the same that did the radio PSAs, Learfield. We have a standing contract with them. So the ads would run for 5 weeks and estimated 4.3 impressions. Nothing is signed on that yet. Wanted to get your input and buy-in, basically, again, just to make sure we spend that $100,000. I haven't heard of any other people requesting a training course at this point. I would be really hesitant to want to approve one in June when they'd have basically 2 weeks to turn it around. Doesn't seem like enough time.
So you can use training money for advertising?
It would be public education.
How does the Facebook ads work? Will there be an algorithm so the people that are interested will be able to see these ads? So we make sure that we get as much visibility?
The way I assume it works, and I just got the quote and
Okay.
the high level details, I haven't asked questions
Yeah.
like that yet, but the way I assume it works is it targets what area you're in, and if you're in Iowa, it cycles through and it can guarantee how many times that ad is going to show and display on a phone or on a web browser within Iowa.
And I think that's a good idea because it hits people in another way, not just the radio ads, because people are online. They're online for their agency. So I think that's a really good idea.
And you click on the ad, and I assume there's going to be additional information. Then it would either go to our Text 911 website or it'd be specially designed for additional information.
Just a general question on that. When they do click on the ad, is there going to give you guys these communication or some type of tracking mechanism? You can get, it goes to a website, you get email, contact, stuff like that.
Yeah, so the question for those on the phone was, do we get any reporting at the end of this campaign to know how many clicks, how many people actually went to the ad? I'll make sure that that's part of it. I would assume working with Learfield during the PSAs was really good. I would assume that would be part of it, but I'll double check. Like I said, I just got all the quotes and the information about it yesterday.
Blake, just to clarify, on your overhead, you had Louisa County as one of the GIS grant apps. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we just need to add on our agenda, Louisa County.
Yep, they came in late, right before the deadline.
Okay.
I had already sent the agenda, but they got it in before. the
Okay,
deadline.
so just
Yep.
an asterisk there
Yep.
that we are
Good catch.
including Louisa County.
Okay.
Any other questions for Blake?
I guess, did you want to give me formal authorization to do that, or do you want to handle it in new business? Or not want to do it?
I would have no problem with formal authorization unless somebody has a concern with it.
I guess if we're looking for a motion then, for the record, I would make the motion that we give latitude to the program director to spend approximately the remaining balance of something like 13,000 on public education, as he sees best fit.
She got it all. Oh, she's good.
Just make up something.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I second that.
Okay, any discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple more things to bring to your attention. This one's legislatively. Might have slid under the radar, but it's a fairly significant change. It's kind of an extension of the Newborn Safe Haven Act to include, it can be triggered by a 911 call now. So I want to make sure everyone's aware of that. Probably want to talk with your county attorneys, your lead law enforcement officials in your jurisdiction, that a safe haven drop-off can now be triggered by a 911 call, and the responding first responder would be responsible for that newborn. Yes. And then the transcripts of that can be, or are confidential for privacy.
All right. Anything else?
One more. Actually, a couple more. So last year about this time, we spoke, John Benson did as well at a NENA presentation about the local county 911 budgets and making sure that any excess funds that are managed at the local level are either designated or reserved or assigned. So you can see last year there was $22.5 million in undesignated funds at the local level statewide. Everyone listened to us, and now that number went up to 27.9 in undesignated funds. Again, that basically tells people that at the local counting level, there's $27.9 million that you have no idea what you're going to do with at the local level of 911 with 911 funds. And we're freeing up more money through our virtual consolidation efforts. And in fact, the amount in the designated funds that we wanted more designated, that went down. So during the 911 program manager day, that's normally held in the fall, APCO NENA, the conference, we're gonna bring in Department of Management and take about 30 to 45 minutes and kind of do a budgeting 101 course with the people that are there to kind of go over multiple things, but also this issue.
I think we also should make sure the people that actually, for the different counties, I don't know how it works for each county, but the people that actually work on that budget, have their hands on the budget, are present at that, because, you know, it's not always the PSAP directors or the 911 coordinators that are responsible for the budget, but sometimes people go to their county auditor, and those individuals need to be part of that conversation so they're speaking the same language and understand what needs to be done.
I agree, and that's hard from our perspective as well because it's done so differently in every county.
I mean, a part of it could be in their mind, they know what they're gonna do with it, but they just haven't put it on paper, correct?
Correct.
I mean, they may have a plan. It just isn't transparent plan.
Correct. That very well could be, and that's part of the education piece that, you know, then get it on paper.
Well, and again, for the history, which I think for the most part, everybody here listening, but the reason that we got into the golden goose problem a few years ago is when we had 20 some odd $million of surplus.
And to be clear, that was the state operating surplus, but you're right, similar.
But it's easy to look at it in big numbers, and we know then that some of us didn't agree with where the money went, but enough said. But yeah, I agree that education and getting the transparency and getting it down what the plan is a good one.
And how to recruit people into those meetings is the other problem, because I think in most cases, we're probably preaching to the choir here. But there's those others that just sort of hang out there.
And I will do the same that I did last year. I'll talk about it at the PSEP supervisor group meetings. I'm talking about it here, and I'll send out an email, but that still doesn't have as far of a reach as I assume.
Are you able to request who actually works on the budget from each of the PSEP, each of the coordinators? Because if that's the case, then we can send out, if they're not present, we can send out a copy of the PowerPoint slides, we can send out instructions, and then they sign off on it. Just some kind of accountability.
Yeah, I believe that's included as part of the form.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
Yes.
Is it possible to maybe address the auditors at ISAC?
Okay, the question is it possible to address the auditors at ISAC? I don't know why it wouldn't be.
They're the ones that have to certify the budget, so.
I'll ask the question. It's a good one. Last thing, I managed to get myself appointed as the NASNA representative. So again, the organization of my counterparts is NASNA, to the Public Safety Advisory Committee, which advises FirstNet on all things public safety and how to better roll out and manage FirstNet, bring concerns to FirstNet. So I have that meeting June 4th. The discussion that we had over the last couple months on certain hospitals as political subdivisions, sent that memo out. My biannual NASNA meeting is also this month, or I'm sorry, June, middle of June. And then just a note, notice maybe a couple folks from ComTech here. A lot of you are familiar with Lori Hickok. She's been with the project for Next Gen 911 since its advent here in Iowa. She is leaving ComTech. Her last day is tomorrow. So a lot of you end up going directly to her instead of calling the knock. My message is just call the knock for any troubleshooting issues. She's not going to have her normal work phone anymore. So still feel free to CC me on any issues, so make me aware. But the ComTech knock is still that one-stop shop for your troubleshooting. That's it. Any other questions? Yep.
I had one, Blake, a few slides backwards. Shortly after your $6,000 and $12,000 incentive program, there was one. Okay, this one, yeah, here. So also provide grants. So this is in addition to.
This is just what the.
Or this is just the language.
This is just the language. It's kind of showing we have a wide range of what we can do.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, we went through it and we got talking about some other things. And I didn't know if this was that language or if
this is not changed. Where it is in 34A changed, but the language has not changed.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Blake. All right, moving on to the GIS grant applications with the addition of Louisa County. I think Blake pretty much went over that. I would entertain a motion to approve those 4 together.
Make the motion to approve all 4.
Good, is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Okay, and then we also have a training funds request for Officer Down, as Blake mentioned, from Mahaska County. Is there a motion to approve that request?
I make the motion to approve the officer down training for Macassa County.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? And motion carries. Okay. Do we have anything from the council on technical advisory?
No.
Yes? No. Oh, okay. Anybody from the floor want to share anything? Okay. That brings us to the Interoperability Governance Board. Chris?
Thank you. I guess before I'll start, I'll say, Blake, congratulations on your new role. And also thank you to the agreement to partake in the 2019 revision of the National Emergency Communications Plan. I'm sure you're going to have a lot of free time going forward.
Yeah, I got to stop raising my hand.
But thank you. It's appreciated. For the council's notification, OEC is looking at revising that emergency communications plan. They asked Iowa for up to 5 subject matter experts on various things. We have a unique array of subject matter experts that encompass law, fire, medical, university, 911 centers and dispatch centers in general. Of the ones that were on the call, the first meeting we had a couple weeks ago, we had the most on the call, and I think we're going to be very well represented during that process. I'm also looking at perhaps establishing an email list for that. So if you're interested in seeing those federal documents as they come out and are ready to be socialized, let me know, and we'll get something like that set up. To restate something from last month, we are still looking at coverage testing for the IS6 platform here in the next few weeks to a couple of months. If you're interested in seeing what coverage actually looks like for yourself, please let me know. We're working on finalizing some of the details of what that could look like as far as how things would be structured with drivers and then observers from the vendor side, and then also a state representative side. So there's room for local participation, which I hope we can work out in some way. If you do have any questions on that, I can get you specifics. Another set of standards have been passed for ISIX and are on the ISIXB website from last month's meeting. We have another standards meeting set for June 5th, and several will be before the board today. Of note, a pursuit standard will be up before the board later this morning. I know that one has been debated for quite some time, and it looks like we're finally ready to adopt something. Of note, the ISIX platform was just used in a recent COMEX exercise at the end of April. The results were very positive and encouraging overall, so it's becoming real as far as the network actually rolling out, which is exciting to see. I have several meetings over the next 45 days in which LMR technology is going to be discussed at length. I will put the invitation out there again that if anyone has an LMR network using P25 technology that they have any specific needs for, please let me know. One of these meetings will be a very high-level one with some high-level people within the various vendors, Harris, Motorola, EF Johnson, Kenwood, ICOM. They're all going to be at one coming up in a couple of weeks. So if you have any concerns, please let me know. I'm happy to pass them on. Some interest also has been expressed to me in how something like point-to-point could be incorporated into ISIX. I'm kind of roping back into the LMR network now. I'm going to be working on a survey in the coming weeks to see how something like this could work. I know point-to-point is done differently in various parts of the state, and I want to make sure that anything the board does doesn't adversely affect a practice that's already in place somewhere else. So if you have any thoughts or concepts on that, please let me know. I'm happy to hear any feedback. Otherwise, I'll keep this brief as I can and I'll take any questions. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next we'd like to hear from Jim Lundstedt from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Office of Emergency Communication.
Good morning. In keeping with Swick Meyer's effort to be brief, I'll just bring two quick things to you today. Back in the week of April 9th, each of your PSAPs should have received an alert for a cyber threat that came through either APCO or NENA. And some organizations have questioned why that didn't come directly from DHS. With an approximate audience of 16,000 PSAPs across the U.S., either primary or secondary, it was decided to anonymize the information to the extent that we could disseminate it at the classified level to the fusion centers. So your Iowa Intelligence Fusion Center had the information, and then we used that existing methodology to extend the alert to all of the PSAPs. It was a legitimate process. We continue to explore methods to share real-time information, but have to do so in a very careful manner to protect sources and methods. I would look for that to be continuing in the future. That seemed to work well, although there were some questions raised. Why didn't this come directly from DHS? I've spoken to the staff at the NCIC and the NCC where we released the information. We recognize it caused a little bit of concern, and we're working to improve that process. But we think it worked well for the most part. There were a number of sources identified over the prior 90 days that established the basis for a credible threat. So if you're watching what's going on in the world today, expect to hear more in the near future. Yes, sir.
I don't know if it's because maybe I'm not a member of APCO, but I didn't get that then through any other source.
You didn't? No. Okay. I will take that to the NCIC. And I think one of the problems we have with going to the 911 directors is that you get so many taps that they almost become ignored. But that's good feedback, Flake, and I'll take that back. Secondly, both the National Council of Statewide Interoperability Coordinators and the SAFECOM community will be meeting in Portland next week. We will talk a great deal about cybersecurity and 911 initiatives, so more to come on that topic. Last thing, I constantly hammer Stop, Think, Connect as part of my required annual security training. One of the flashing screens this week said, you are part of the DHS defense against cyber attacks. 91% of cyber incidents started last year in email. Stop, think, connect. Look at what you're clicking on before you invite it in your network. There are so many threats and adversarial things that are sent to us either by phishing or spear phishing. You're named, and just click on this link. We get them every day. 91% in 2017 were believed to have come through email as the threat vector. So be aware. Any questions for me? Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, legislative issues. Nothing? Okay. Any items for discussion? All right. I don't believe we have any unfinished business that I'm aware of. New business? Okay. And I don't believe we have any travel requests. Okay. Any business from the floor? Okay. Well, that was quick. You have something.
Maybe it was under the old business, the discussion on the public hospitals. I mean, you sent out the information, Blake did, but is that based on the email and the Attorney General's opinion, or do we need to discuss that, or where are we?
I don't need to discuss it anymore. I know there had been talk, and Tracy was heading up kind of a work group on recommending some changes or additional language to how to better describe that. But our AG approved the memo that I sent out. Our department director approved the memo that we sent out. So I think that's the guidance going forward. Now, if the guidance changes because the code changes at some point, that would obviously
Right,
change.
okay.
But
All right, thank you.
Yeah, and we're working on our initial meeting. We're going to do a half-day work session so we can get as much done as possible and then work on changes, hopefully via conference call so people don't have to keep traveling. But the first one is going to be at least a half-day meeting.
Okay. All right, well, that takes care of all of our agenda items. Do I have a motion to adjourn? So moved, and second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.